Welcome, everyone. You are tuning into Engaging Walk. My name is Drake.
And my name is Rubie.
We believe in the power of walking together and talking together.
It's a simple act to stay connected, and movement is key.
This week, we will discuss the concept of familial problems.
And how you and your significant other can take time to make deep connections.
So this week, we took a walk up in Escondido, California, which is about 45 minutes north of San Diego. We doing a little bit of house hunting, looking at the market up there. And so we took a walk. Took an engaging walk with, of course, Boba. She has not been able to leave our side since we got her. And so that was really fun. It was a really fun experience to do some house hunting. For those of you out there in the market in California, we feel your pain. And if you're looking for house elsewhere in the country, you probably don't know our pain. So be glad that you are where you are for that purpose. All right, so this week we're going to be diving into the content of familial problems or problems with your families.
Yes. So let's talk about the common familial problems that you may see. Now, the reason that we talk about this because during our courting.
Yeah, our courtship.
There you go. Courtship. I discovered there are more things on the table that I have not looked at, which are like, how do you deal with in-laws? Are you talking to your friends after your marriage? All the shifting, So that's why we want to look into the common familial problems. So one of the things that I feel like is very common is that your in-law want to be involved in the decision making in your marriage, which is understandable. Like where I'm coming from, which is Asian culture, where it's understanding that respect your in-law or your parents when you take in their input in your decision making. But now it's gonna a little bit different, a little bit shift when you are in marriage because you're no longer a single person and you're no longer under the roof. Now you have a covenant with another human, which is your husband or your wife. And for me as a believer, the scripture said that we become one. So now I get to make my decisions with my husband or my wife.
Yeah. So the tradition is that the father gives away the daughter to the husband, and basically saying like, "Hey, she's yours now. She's not under my roof anymore. She's under yours.
Yeah.
She's yours to take care of." And, I think a lot of times, like, there might be, like, a misconception of, like, almost like what they call, like, toxic masculinity around that. But that's not thinking about that correctly, I think. I think that that's not a responsibility to take lightly. If you're the man of the house, in this case, you're the husband, and you're taking another man's daughter and you're saying, "I will take care of her. I'm not going to boss her around. I'm not going to tell her what to do with her life. We're going to live our life together, but ultimately I'm responsible for her. She's responsible for herself, but I have a certain level of responsibility to take care of her."
That's right.
Not just because of the fact that I swore like a vow to do so, but at some point she's going to be pregnant. At some point she might have, reasons why she can't work, and that's my responsibility to go out there and to work and to provide for her and for the family. So that's not something that we take lightly, but that's like the root of that is the husband, the father gives away to the husband, and now we make the decisions together. Do they have input? Yes. Is it the same weight as the spouse? No. And then Greek culture, where my family's from, is very similar to Vietnamese. There's actually a scary amount of different similarities between Vietnamese and Greek culture. So that's something that we wanted to highlight here because, like Rubie said, that there's that's something that you might not take into consideration when you're getting married, that you're also getting married to that person's family. So that's one thing that you might want to start thinking about, and especially in terms of like the language. So you want to stop thinking about, oh, that's your family. My family, we do this. You want to get rid of that, like
That's
really.
right. I think that's very important.
You want to get rid of that like as soon as possible because there's no more your family and my family. There's just our family.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's again like earlier with that concept. You want to really be if you're married or if you're about to get married, you want to think about that moment very carefully that you're taking another man's daughter.
Yeah.
And you are saying, yes, I will take care of her. I will love her and I will honor her and I will do everything in my power to make sure that I'm a good husband. And that's very powerful, and it's a lot of responsibility to carry, but ultimately it makes you a better person.
Yeah. And then another, I'm going to jump back on to like the common problems that we usually face is as for a wife, they usually say like, oh, your relationship with your mother-in-law will be like hectic, chaotic. But I think it's a mindset, like how do you want to approach it is up to you. So if you prepare your mind that it's hectic, it's chaotic, it's not pleasant, then it's gonna happen like that. So for me, I think I would just want to break that off. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna have a really nice relationship with my mother-in-law, and guess what? She's my mother, so why not? Why don't we have a good relationship? And I think it's like it reflect back to become a powerful person. Like, yeah, I don't have the power over the thought, the emotion, the action, but I in charge of my thought and my emotions and my action. So being intentional to love on the mother-in-law and reach out to her. And she's not with us. She lived in Europe. So being intentional to reach out to her, to talk to her and connect with her. And I think that will just send a message like, hey, I really want to get to know you. And I think like family, we don't get to choose them. I was born into my family. And so it's kind of crazy and interesting to look into like, hey, when I married Drake, I get to have extension, a lot of more people in my family, it become my family. Yet I don't know them well, but hey, I have a strong bond with them because now they are my family. So I think it's about mindset, and I think we need to like have a healthy mindset on that as well with our in-laws. Like, hey, this is my brother. I get to know him. I don't know much about you, the brother-in-laws, but hey, I love to know more about you, and I want to know how your relationship between you and Drake and how you guys grow up together and, the memories and all the good stuff. So, and I think that a shift in the mindset will help a lot. And also a lot of people say like, oh, when I marry that person, I'm scared that, that person will just box me in and I not get to, live the single life I used to live. Not like I cannot talk to my family the way I used to, or, it just cut off all my freedom. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a balance. Well, on one end, you can have the spouse who takes away their let's say if you're the husband and you take your wife away from her family and you don't allow communication, or you don't allow them to come over for her family to come, her side of the family to come over for Christmas or holidays and things like that. And you're perfectly fine with your family being involved. Well, obviously that's wrong, but that does happen. And that's not healthy because that's like being possessive, I guess, is one way of thinking about it. Yeah. And we don't possess our spouse. They are their own person. But we are one. So the other end of that is that you don't want that your spouse to be like involved in everything, like, or having like the overall say in everything that happens in the marriage with their family, and then the other spouse is just like kind of taking a passive role and just like along for the ride. Yeah, that's not good either. So just being like a hermit crab, like little, spouse, like a marriage where you're just like the two of you, and then being both situations you're powerless. Both situations you're not connected, and then in the other scenario with the other spouse is just there. They're like art.
The flower on the wall.
It's like the flower on the wall, not involved in anything. And unfortunately, these things do happen. But we shouldn't set out for those to happen. And if they do start to tend to make those tendencies, then we want to address them.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, babe, I love you, but you're the love of my life, and we're married. You and I are a family. But what is wrong with my family, or what's the issue of me having my family over for Thanksgiving? And there should be a back and forth,
Yeah.
of discussing that, because you don't want to cut them off from their family. That's not right. But you also you have your own family to run, so you have to have that balance, and you have to have those conversations, and you have to think about like what's fair, and you have to have conversations not just about those events, but also about the worst case scenario things that can pop up.
Ooh.
Like how are you going to handle elderly parents, infirm parents, and what are your traditions? I know in my family we're Greek, and it's very similar to the Vietnamese culture, where we don't really allow our elderly parents to just fend for themselves.
Yeah.
We take them into our home, and we don't allow them to go to nursing homes. That's not a thing in Greek culture.
Yeah. And so that before that happened, like my parents growing old. So this is the topic that we're going to discuss with each other very soon, and how we're going to take care of them. And like I shared before, family, suddenly when you marry the person, it depends on how much time do you spend with them before marriage. Like how well do you know them? So if let's say you just get to know them, few years, and it's not that deep level of connection, and then suddenly they become your family members. Now, I think that's the art of the other person, to how you bring them into your family. So like for Drake, since my family only get to know him, right before our marriage. So, and then they don't speak English. So it's kind of hard for him to hold a conversation with my parents. So I will be the one that, like drag him in. Not drag him in, but involved him in a conversation, teach him Vietnamese phrases. And for him on his end, he loved learning the language. He tried to remember every single thing. So
it's really hard because I grew up speaking Greek and Spanish because my other side of the family is Cuban. And so I grew up with like three, and I'm not very good at languages. Like I had to really study, and I had to really make an effort to learn Greek and Spanish, so, but my Spanish and my Greek really aren't that good anymore. And I'm 36 now. So when Rubie's
you don't have to discover
when Rubie's teaching me Vietnamese, I make a really good effort to try to remember, but it's very challenging.
Yeah. So I think
and then the sentence structure is really interesting, because there's honorifics.
It's opposite.
Yeah, and there's a lot of honorifics. There's a lot of how you say how are you is very different from if the person's older than you than if they're and they're a male versus if they're younger.
Female.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
We're all about honoring, respect people. So go back to the how to manage the conflicts. I think as the other spouse is the middleman, to connect, to find other opportunities so that your spouse get to know your family and become their friends.
Yeah.
Make it more fun. And
then also to make sure that your family understands the boundaries.
Yes.
To be like, hey, you know what? I love you, bro. But that suggestion that you had is not really something that I appreciate. But that's not, for example, let's say if your brother's like, hey, let's go to Vegas and party this weekend, and they're really pressuring you, and they're like, oh, but your wife won't let you do it. No, it's not a matter of my wife won't let me do it. It's a matter of we have responsibilities and we have things that we got to do. And I can't just up and go to Vegas and party with you during this weekend. It's not my wife's fault. Don't pin that on her.
Yeah.
Just as an example, that didn't happen to me and my family, but that does happen. And when you get married, you have those echoes of single life popping back up.
Yeah.
but from your single friends that are still in the single land. Hey, come party this weekend.
Yeah. And I love the way that you mentioned, like, if something, any voice around your marriage and voice in and to target a single person, either your spouse, I'm sorry, either your wife or your husband, your job is to say, hey, remind them, like, hey, we are one. This, don't target the other person. We gonna make this decision, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, it sounds like, hey, it's a teamwork. It's a team. You don't attack one, you know, person in here. You know?
Yeah, you have to remind those people, hey, I'm not making decisions for myself anymore. I'm making decisions for two people now.
And it's not like they intentional doing that. Maybe because, you know, it's just a new stage that they,
Yeah.
not just you learning, you know, a new thing. They have to learn that as well. So be graceful and just remind them, hey, thank you for letting me know that. But hey, we are the team and we're gonna make decisions together.
Yeah, and then the last thing that we want to discuss before we go into the assignment for this week is how beautiful it is to unify your families in the act of marriage. It was so wonderful having our families together for our wedding.
Yeah.
It was like, I mean, so for me, we both live in San Diego, and then my family is all on the East Coast of the United States. My mom goes back and forth between Europe and the East Coast of the United States. And then Rubie's family is from Vietnam.
Yeah,
and
flew all the way in.
He flew all the way in. My family flew all the way in, and we had a huge party for our celebration, for our wedding, and it was so nice to see them all together.
Yeah, it was fun to get to know different cultures, but at the same time, we share so many similarities.
Yeah,
which is a surprise.
Yeah, like no one there's no one speaks the same language, but we still had a great time.
I think we should talk about that, you know, in the next episode in the future.
Yeah, it's very surprising. You know, it's one crazy thing is that in Greek culture we wear the wedding ring on the right hand.
Yeah.
On the on the ring finger on the right hand. And what's crazy is in Vietnam they do the same thing.
Yep.
The same hand, same finger.
That's why we caused a lot of, you know, confusions when we were wearing the wedding ring on the right hand, because people were looking on my left hand and they see no ring, but they see you know, the wedding ring on the right hand. So like, wait, are you married or not?
Yeah. So I think when we were like getting the rings, or like when we like around we're cleaning them, we realized like, oh, our family traditions are the same.
Yeah.
That we're supposed to wear it, because we were initially wearing it on the left hand, and then once we realized that like our family traditions were the same, then we switched over because it was so interesting that there was that overlap that we decided not to ignore it.
Yeah. And
so it's a little. So if you ever see us with our wedding rings on that hand, it'll make sense now.
Yeah, and I had so much fun. I remember that I think the whole family danced together. Your family danced together, and then you guys do. Actually, you doing certain movement when you like kind of like cleaning the sole of your shoes, but actually it's meaning something else. Like, what are you doing? It was funny. Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot to get into. I know we've covered a lot of heavy topics lately, so we're gonna try to make a transition. And discuss a very light and fun topic next week. So we'll get into that, but right now let's talk about this assignment. So what we want to do, or we want you all to do this week, is to be clear with yourself and with your significant other, your spouse, whomever, and be very clear about how you're going to handle familial problems in your relationship. What are the expectations? Mm-hmm. And discuss what you would do in your family's worst case scenarios. For example, the things that we discussed earlier, your in-laws moving in, inheritance disputes. How are you going to handle, like, if, you know, this might be helpful for you to think about in general. Like if, hey, what happens with this property? Who is this property going? Like if this person gets this property, how are you going to handle that? And then also what to do when your parents retire and need care.
Yep.
Are you going to, very important, also like have that discussion. And Rubie and I had that discussion a long time ago, but that's something that we're going to need to revisit as time goes on, and, you know, situations change.
Yeah.
But definitely have those conversations and be mindful about each other's traditions and what you would like to see, and just be open and honest about it.
Yeah, and sometimes just the last one, like sometimes you know parents coming in and share, and just remind them like, hey, we respect you, but just remind them, hey, I'm married to this person, and I'm confident with the person, so I'm gonna discuss with the person first, and then come back to you.
Yeah. It's probably one of the best lines of being married. Let me check with my spouse and I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
It gives you so much breathing room. Do not ever be afraid to pull that card. Because everybody immediately understands. They're like, oh yeah, you have a spouse? Got you. Let me give you that space so you can make that decision together. So
Yeah.
you feel a slight little bit of pressure. You're like, oh, let me get back to my wife and talk to you.
Oh my goodness. All right.
Okay, so that's our assignment, and again, we've been super thankful. We're super thankful with all the people that are tuning in. We thank you guys for tuning in this week with us, and we hope that you can take our engaging walk that we had and make it your own.
And stay tuned for the next week episode when we will discuss about raising our puppy, Boba, the corgi.
Yep, and don't forget to click the follow button, subscribe button, and check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we have engagingwalk.com for more information. This is Drake and Rubie with Engaging Walk, and we are